that, will be there for a long time. I hope to create a foundation, and I think we're well on our way to doing that, that is here for the long term. That hopefully it'll survive me and go on and keep helping people in the spirit of personal touches that I've tried to give it, and it will be there, and last, for decades. That's what I hope. I'm in it for good. It's a meaningful mission. Service has been a great thing for my life. And I think we're helping a lot of people now, and I can see that the building blocks that we've laid here over this time are solid, and people trust it and want to support it.
Well, some of the work that you're doing is incredible, and you got this. We built a home for U.S. Army Ranger Sergeant First Class Michael Schlitz, who served as a rifleman and platoon sergeant in southern Iraq. On February 27, 2007, Mike and his crew were conducting road-clearing mission near Baghdad when their vehicle struck a hidden IED and burst into flame. His gunner, Sergeant Richard Sukenka, and medic, Sergeant Jonathan Cadavero, were killed instantly. His driver, Corporal Lorne Henry Jr., passed away shortly after the blast. Mike rode in the passenger seat, engulfed in flames. He was thrown from the vehicle. He lost both hands and the sight in his left eye and sustained burns over 85% of his body. Early in Mike's recovery, he started going to a program at UCLA called Operation Mend, consisting of a team of surgeons who help provide free surgeries to our severely wounded veterans. When I first met Mike, he was so severely burned, he didn't have a nose and he talked through a hole in his throat. We struck up a friendship. Over the years, he's had multiple reconstructive surgeries to repair the damage to his eyelids, mouth, and nose, and other parts of his body where the skin was burned. Having lost both arms, he now uses 2 prosthetic hooks. Mike's living situation posed innumerable challenges for him. Because of the fragility of his skin, Mike preferred colder temperatures and often needed to turn the air conditioner on full blast. His mom, Robbie, in his full-time caregiver, and she wore heavy coats to keep warm in the house. Direct sunlight is hard on Mike's eyes, so he preferred to keep all the shades drawn. We built them a home with one section for Mike and another for his mom, where the temperature and light in each section of the house can be individually governed. Mike has a special shower and a gym that he can navigate by himself. We helped restore Mike's independence and helped empower them both. Mike is an amazing individual who's dedicating his life to honoring his fallen brothers through serving his fellow veterans. An ambassador for my foundation, he helps us with our veterans outreach as our military and veterans resource manager. With our Smart Home program, we work with each wounded service member to provide exactly what they need. Master Sergeant John Mason is married and has 3 kids. On October 16, 2010, while conducting village stability operations in Kandahar province, Afghanistan, John, a medic with the 20th Special Forces Group, stepped on a hidden IED and lost both legs and his left arm. Due to the severity of his amputations, he can't wear prosthetics and he's confined to a wheelchair. The hallways in his house were too narrow for a wheelchair. Additionally, he couldn't reach anything in the closets, and the bathroom was too small for him to navigate alone. So we built John a house for him and his family that allows him to be independent and in turn allows his wife and children to worry less about caring for him. We built a home for Captain Luis Avila and his family. Luis served 5 combat tours in Afghanistan and Iraq. On December 27, 2011, Luis's vehicle ran over an IED. Luis lost his left leg, then suffered 2 strokes and 2 heart attacks, resulting in traumatic brain injury. Ultimately, he was left almost completely paralyzed. Today, he continues to heal while maintaining an incredibly positive attitude and sense of humor. His wife, Claudia, is his full-time caregiver and never leaves his side. She is one of the fierce fighters for the needs of our wounded service members and reminds us of the importance of also supporting our caregivers. Each smart home is given to the veteran free of charge. The mortgage for the house and land is completely underwritten. The veteran can select what part of the country he or she wants to live in. We built a home for police officer Michael Flamion from Baldwin, Missouri. He was shot in the neck by an assailant during a routine traffic stop and is paralyzed from the neck down. His wife is now his full-time caregiver, and the home, built specifically for Michael's challenges, provides some much-needed support and relief. So, I mean, those, if you can listen to those and recognize what you're doing, I mean, that's just phenomenal. Phenomenal. And, you know, we already talked about this, but I'll add this little thing. You got a program called Soaring Valor. And one of the things you did with the Navy, with the National World War II Museum in New Orleans, is made a film. You did the voiceover for the film, and in the film, the voice you use, or the person you're what is it, acting? Portraying is Ernie Pyle, the famous war correspondent who wrote dispatches from the war zones in Europe and Asia. And
yeah, that's how I got involved with the World War II Museum, you know, over 10 years ago. Tom Hanks was one of the producers on that film, and he invited me to play Ernie Pyle. Yeah. So I did the voiceover for Ernie. That started my relationship with the World War II Museum. Now we've taken, through my foundation and our Soaring Valor program, we've taken hundreds of World War II veterans down to see the museum, and we've recorded them on video telling their stories, and those stories are preserved in the library at the museum.
Well, two things. Number one, we covered Ernie Pyle on this podcast right here, number 39. And if you don't know this about Ernie Pyle, he was actually killed in action in the Battle of Okinawa. And two, I don't know what we can do to get the recordings out of the library and into the interwebs, but we should do that. Let's get them out there. The stuff that you know, again, another example. Staff Sergeant Jason Ross, March 2011, during his second deployment to Afghanistan, Jason lost both of his legs, part of his pelvic bone where an IED exploded. Doctors gave him less than 2% chance of survival, but Jason never stopped fighting. Complications set in, and surgeons ended up needing to take more and more from his legs until eventually all his hips were gone. To date, he's undergone more than 240 surgeries. Basically, the entire lower half of his body is no longer there. We built a smart home for Jason and his family in San Diego. When we handed over the keys to him in his ceremony, his 6-year-old daughter, Stacy, asked to speak. "My daddy is Jason Ross," she said. "When I was little, my daddy got hurt in Afghanistan. He was in the hospital for a long time. My daddy is strong and brave." Another thing you guys do, you talk about here. My foundation's final program is called Relief and Resiliency Outreach. This is an umbrella program where we simply try to help veterans and their family in any way possible, including those recovering from trauma, injury, or loss. Within the umbrella is a mentoring program. I've had a long relationship with the Disabled American Veterans, DAV, and know several wounded veterans who've lived with their injuries for decades, so I thought of providing an opportunity to introduce some of our younger wounded veterans from Iraq and Afghanistan to veterans from previous wars. I met with Jim Sursley, a Vietnam veteran triple amputee and former national commander of the DAV, to gauge his interest and get his thoughts. He responded positively and said he would love to be involved and that he would discuss it with the DAV leadership. And if you want to know about more about Jim Sursley, Layers, Podcast 200. In here talking about his story, which is incredible. And you close this section out by saying the simple story is here that from its creation in 2011, the foundation has grown into a friendly giant. We've gone from one donor, just me in the beginning, to a base of more than 45,000 donors and an annual budget of nearly $30 million. While we can never do enough to show our gratitude to our nation's defenders, veterans, first responders, and the families who serve alongside them, and you have this little mantra, this little motto, we can always do a little more. And I think the idea of we can always do a little more is probably a good place to wrap, even though it's not the last chapter. The last chapter is actually called Why I'm Still on a Mission. And obviously, there's an important message there. But that also ties in with the motto, we can always do a little bit more.
And I guess they'll have to buy the book to get that last chapter.
Yes, indeed. And the book contains a lot of reasons why we all still need to stay on mission. And as I was preparing to do this podcast, I knew that I was going to be reading your words. And then I thought back to a time when you actually read some of my words. When Mikey Mansour was killed in Iraq, I gave a speech at his memorial service in Ramadi, and the theme of that speech was Roger that. Because I told the story where I had told Mike and the rest of the new guys in the task unit that when the instructor cadre from the training detachment came and told them to do something or corrected them or yelled at them, the only thing they were allowed to say back was Roger that. And so a couple days went by, and one of the master chiefs, who was a friend of mine, he came up to me and he's like, "Hey, what the hell's up with this Mansour guy?" And I said, "What do you mean?" He says, every time I tell him to do something or fix something, he just looks at me and says, "Roger that." And I said, "Hey man, that's exactly what I told him to say." And that actually became Mikey's attitude. And no matter what he was asked to do, no matter how hard the task, his response was always Roger that, including when a grenade was thrown that threatened the lives of 3 of our other teammates. And only one person could save them, was Mikey. And in order to do so, he had to smother that grenade with his own body and sacrifice his life for his friends. And in that moment of truth, his response was the same. Roger that. And a few years later, at the Republican National Convention, there was a tribute to Mikey. And it was rooted in the same theme. And clearly it had been taken from the eulogy that I delivered in the dusty hangar with a broken heart in Ramadi, Iraq, just after Mikey was killed, and that theme was Roger that. And the tribute for Mikey was delivered by none other than Gary Sinise. And it was a fitting tribute. Fit for a hero such as Mikey, who continues every day to inspire us all to do a little more and to live our lives as grateful Americans. So I thank you for doing that, Gary.
You're welcome. It was a privilege. I didn't know that came from you, Jocko. That's amazing. I looked it up recently. I told you I wanted to do something on the 1-year anniversary of the commissioning of Mike's ship. And so I posted something on my social media, and I found that video.